welcome to Taking the Myth, your topical, skeptical discussion show. I'm Stephen Knight, and joined all the way from London, hello love, watch it you mug, it's Iram Ramzan&nbsp. Iram, how are you?
What? What, geezer?
What? Alright love, evening standard. So,
apples and pears.
fitting in well with the locals, are you? Integrating?
I am. I'm just going to go out after and eat some jelly deals with the locals.
That's
and other London things.
very, very exotic cuisine down south.
Yeah.
A few notice board items. I interviewed the mighty Ricky Gervais again the other day.
Yes, you did.
It went really well. So I'd like to point people towards that. Really good discussion about comedy and freedom of expression and social media, and he was quite candid and open. So I'm very pleased with that. I did nearly bollocks the whole thing up, though. Do you want to hear about that?
Do I ever?
So given I'm a professional podcaster, I like to give my guests various options. So when I reach out, I let them know that I can call them on Skype. I let them know that I can dial out to any landline or mobile number, internationally or otherwise. Or I also set up a dedicated Skype telephone number so that people could dial in if they wanted. So I chose like a local area code. So as you know, hailing from the mighty Manchester, that's 0161.
0161.
I set up this incredible landline number. It even had 3 6s in it because you can kind of stipulate your own number. And I set this up years ago, and you have to pay so much for it every few months, and I assumed this was a rolling subscription. Yeah, so
I can guess now.
So I'm fully prepared for this interview. Now the thing is, I'd contacted Ricky, and he said, "Yeah, call me on my mobile." So that was the plan. I was ready for that. I made sure I had Skype credit of £30. That's the minimum. I never let it fall below that, just so that I'm always prepared. And about a minute before I was due to dial him, I get a quick message. And it says, actually, I want to use Jane's phone, his partner. I want to use her mobile because she's got some sort of headset microphone thing, makes it easy for him. So he'll call me. Can he have a number? So sure, fired out this number to him. 5 minutes passed, nothing happened. 6 minutes, nothing. So I thought, I'm just going to dial this number, see if it's still active. Dialed, ring. Some German guy answers it.
What?
Some guy in Germany answers it. So what happened is, because I've not resubscribed to this landline Skype number service, they've disconnected me from it, and they've just sold it again to some guy in Germany.
Sold it to some Germans?
To some coming over here, taking our landline numbers. So I panicked, and I quickly set up a new number, just a random number, fired it off to Ricky. I said, I'm really sorry. I believe I've just put you through to some German guy. And he was like, yeah. He said twice. He said, I rang him back again because I wanted a second opinion. He said, yeah, but it definitely wasn't you. So there's some German chap out there who's no idea that he's been called by Ricky Gervais twice because of my overt incompetence. I apparently put you through to an old bloke, which I feel I have to apologise for.
Twice, as I wanted a second opinion. I got exactly the same opinion.
Oh my God!
He definitely was not you.
He could have been.
He wasn't only old; he was German. So I thought, well, if this is your idea of a joke, then yeah.
Risky joke, that really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a crap joke.
Yes.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I want to point people towards that interview. It's a great chat. Go and listen to it, share it around, etc. I also spoke to Tom Slater at Spiked Online about free speech.
I was listening to that.
Now, I know Spiked have got mixed reviews from my audience, which is fine. Obviously, we should be critical of any publication, really.
No. You're only supposed to interview people you agree with 100%.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're endorsing everything they say. What if they end up saying something you don't like? Then you could end up being some sort of Nazi sympathiser.
We wouldn't want that. 9. Yeah, so you're right. And the thing is, I mean, I have disagreements with some of the things they publish. A lot of it seems to be from a contrarian bent rather than, it seems to be like, well, what's the big opinion of the day? Well, we're going to oppose that opinion, which is fine. But there's a lot of, I mean, every time I've spoke to somebody from that publication, Ella Whelan,
He's looking at you, Brendan O'Neill.
Brendan O'Neill, he makes sense on a lot of things, dodgy on other things. There was a girl on BBC Big Questions this morning. She was the only one there she was from Spike. She was defending freedom of expression. So, yeah, they're a mixed bag, but I think it's worth listening to this episode that I've done with Tom Slater about free speech on campuses and the no platforming mob and the safe space crowd, etc. So, that's all I've got for the notice board items. I believe you wanted to talk about Sara Khan a little bit.
Yeah. Sara Khan, who we've spoken about a few times, former director of Inspire, counter-extremism group. She's now leading the new Commission for Countering Extremism. And it's got some mixed reviews, not least from MCB, Men, Sayda Warsi.
Muslim Council of Britain for the uninitiated.
Yep. Sayda Warsi was very critical as well, saying, this is purely a government-created role for someone who's not going to be critical, which is quite funny because, her role as faiths minister or something was purely a government role. She was appointed by, the Cameron government. Some people have been very vocal on her role before. So it's quite weird, isn't it, that she's in opposition to somebody who's been hired by the government of her own party. It's quite strange. And Sayda Warsi is, I remember when a couple of years ago, this is when she was first, I think she was the chairperson of the Tory party, and she was pelted by eggs. I think it was by Anjum Chowdhury's Al Muhajirun. And, there were, claims of being a sellout and whatnot. And, for someone who's been through that, you'd think you wouldn't use that type of language, rhetoric, or, imply that towards someone else. But you've been through it, so why say the same about somebody else, right? Mm. And a lot of, regardless of whether you think we need this new commission or not, I'm not so sure about it. What are they going to tell us that we don't already know? A lot of these people who are criticizing the appointment of Sara Khan are people who don't even really believe in this commission, first of all, don't even believe in the prevent strategy, don't even agree with the government's counter-extremism strategy in the first place. And yet they're suddenly experts on who should be leading a commission for a strategy they don't believe in.
Yeah, they seem to be very vocal and opinionated when it comes to who shouldn't be doing these things, but they never seem to offer any alternative themselves. They never seem to be able to detail a level of anti-extremism that they'd be able to get on board with. It's always boils down to we don't really want anyone poking the nose into Muslim communities, essentially, which is not how the anti-extremism bill operates. It's
isn't it funny how they claim that the government's always focusing on Muslims, and yet they are the ones that have made it a Muslim issue, because countering extremism, it's going to be all types of extremism. Nobody said anything about just Muslim extremism, and yet they're the ones who said, we need someone who's representative of the Muslim community. Well, hang on a minute. If extremism is an Islamic problem or a Muslim problem, why do we need, first of all, a Muslim and a representative Muslim to deal with an issue that has nothing to do with Islam or Muslims?
Quit it with your inconvenient questions, Iram. They're not welcome here. But yeah, and it's very disconcerting to the rest of the population when one community in particular is producing a disproportionate amount of extremists, and the community leaders from that community want absolutely nothing to, not only do they want absolutely nothing to do with any anti-extremism policy, they want to actively shut it down. And it just doesn't bode well for general public cohesion to start speaking like a left-wing Labour MP. So yeah, I'm not even, when that happened, I mean, you can almost preempt it now. What was the first thing you thought when the headline hit about Sara Khan's new appointment? What came through your mind immediately?
I thought, oh, great, MCB and Men won't like this.
Yes, And you can almost... But I mean, the fact that that's becoming par for the course now and people do expect it and anticipate it, I think makes them kind of groups slightly more easy to dismiss, whereas before we had to pretend we were listening to what they had to say. Now it's just like, well, of course they're gonna object or oppose it. It's the Muslim Council of Britain, it's MPAC, so I just think the government needs to be confident in its own goals when it comes to anti-extremism. Sure, we should take things on board and it should be a process whereby people can have input, but I think they should be very careful about who they empower to inform any legislation that's going to tackle extremism.
Absolutely. And, I saw some groups on social media saying they were actively going to disengage with it. They were even going to bother engage with the commission while Sara Khan was leading it. And I thought that just comes across as so unprofessional and really, really petty. Like, I'm sure in, your daily life, you work with some people that you probably don't like personally, but you have to work with them in order to do your job. Obviously not while you're podcasting, because, you only have to like yourself.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. But it's just silly. You don't have to like the person that you're working with, and this commission, it's going to go around across the country, I think, and they're going to speak to different groups, different people, as many people as possible. So they're not just going to talk to one person, they're going to speak to many people to hear what they have to say. And yet you have some groups out there who really should know better, who are saying, oh, we're actively going to not engage with the head of this commission. It's really silly. It just makes you look bad. And you're saying on the one hand, yeah, we're doing everything we can to counter extremism, terrorism, challenge all these views, but we're not going to engage with the commission because we don't like Sara. So
yeah.
It's really petty. It's really, really petty.
#yeah.
You don't have to like Sara Khan. I'm sure most of these people haven't really even met her. They don't know her personally, but she's there in a professional capacity. If you have problems, if you have issues that you think really should be raised, then rather than not engaging with this commission, you're best off at the table making those views heard, because otherwise they won't be heard. And then, you can't then turn around and moan many months later or a year down the line saying, oh, no one's listening to what we had to say, because you had that opportunity and you decided not to voice your opinions when it mattered.
There's something I wanted to move on to, and I wasn't really sure how best to approach this. It's a very delicate area, really, and it's a fine line, and so I'd be very interested to get your opinions on this, actually. But this is a story that comes via BuzzFeed News. Now, I know that's pretty much an oxymoron, really. BuzzFeed are the trash, essentially. They are like the prototype clickbait internet outlet, but as we've said before, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to dismiss all the stories on there. Just because it's come from BuzzFeed doesn't necessarily mean there's no substance to it. So I think this is something that should be taken on its own merits and considered. And this is the headline: he became a celebrity for putting science before God. Now Lawrence Krauss faces allegations of sexual misconduct. So
I'm not sure how that's linked, but okay, continue.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something we could probably touch on. It's not the main issue, but I'm kind of annoyed about the fact that it's being used to paint a general picture of the so-called skeptic community. I mean, I thought we decided that this was a bad thing to do with Muslims and people of faith, but all of a sudden Lawrence Krauss may or may not have crossed the line, and we have to indict the entire group of skeptics. And whenever they do this, they mean some Americans. You should watch it, like these people in Ireland, England, the wider rest of Europe, in Iran and the Middle East, going, hello, we are self-described skeptics. We hold conferences and engage in activism. But a couple of Americans fall out over something, and suddenly the entire skeptical movement's gone down the pan, which is very interesting. But I mean, I'd like to say up front here, there's no no tribalism on my part here. I'm an admirer of Lawrence Krauss's work. He's a theoretical physicist, quite a very brilliant man, really, in that respect. I've interviewed him on the podcast, but I don't have a relationship with him. So if I'd have found out, or if I could know for certain that he'd crossed the line in terms of, sexual misconduct and things like that, I'd throw him under the bus happily. I wouldn't be too bothered. The problem we've got here is these are allegations, and the amount to inappropriate comments, possible groping, and an attempt to force himself on somebody. And the issue I have here is how if you're applying the burden of proof to it, is what our skeptics are told to do, then you can't come down on one side or the other. And I think that's where that approach does fail on sexual assault, because sexual assault of any stripe is very hard to prove. If someone's behaved sexually aggressive to you, there may be no evidence whatsoever of that apart from your say-so. So how do we draw the line between supporting victims who come forward and speak about this and not doing the whole proven guilty before innocence kind of thing? What is your general view of these kind of stories when they pop up?
They're just, like you said, they're just allegations for now. I really like to reserve judgment until there's more evidence.
Right.
It's like with the whole Tariq Ramadan.
I was going to bring that up, actually.
Well-known academic / scholar Tariq Ramadan. There were so many allegations about him. And then he was finally arrested.
Yes.
In France, and he was charged with raping 2 women.
Yep.
So I guess there's, some basis for police there to arrest him. But I just remember at the time when all these allegations were coming forward, and these were from all different women as well, in various parts of the country and the world. They weren't just in the same place. They had no way of knowing each other. And their stories sounded very similar. So it seemed like there was some sort of pattern. And then eventually, he was arrested for it and charged. And there were some people who just refused to believe any of it, to even consider these allegations. They're like, oh no, this is just Islamophobic. They're trying to discredit Islam. There were articles in Middle East Eye. Saying that, we don't believe these allegations because, we know what France is like. Well, sorry, but
wow,
it doesn't work like that. It's just as they're going on about how they don't want to accept any of these allegations, and yet when allegations are put forth regarding Krauss, they're like, oh, look at this. Oh, what do we have here? They're happy to point their fingers and completely regard him as guilty. We don't know if he is. There's a high chance he probably is. But they're so quick to, immediately denounce someone as guilty when it's from, quote unquote, the skeptic community, whatever the hell that even means. But when it's someone who's from their own side, they're very, very quick to either ignore it or just dismiss the claims entirely. I think, this is one of those cases where you just need a bit more evidence. It's like that story about the girl in Canada, I think it was, who claimed that a man attacked her and cut her hijab or something.
Yeah, this is a hijab story. Made it up.
Yeah. I remember hearing that at the time, and I didn't share it because I thought, I don't know if this is true. It's just something that's put out there. I'd rather wait. And then I'm glad I didn't retweet any of it or share any of the stories, because it turned out to be a fake story. It was fake news.
So here's the thing, there's no tribalism here. So you made a great point about Tariq Ramadan. So I was seeing blogs and stories and allegations about that man for the longest time, and I can't stand him. I really dislike him. I would count him as one of my enemies. And I didn't share them because there were allegations. Then, as soon as the police pressed charges because there'd been official reports into his behaviour, then I shared them, because then it becomes an official investigation. Then it's newsworthy. Then it's worth discussing. I'm trying to be sensible with this Lawrence Krauss stuff, because I can't verify it. The simple fact of the matter is I do not know, and I can't know. So what line do I come down on? I want to be somebody who's sympathetic and empathetic and somebody who listens to victims. I don't want to look at the people in this article and take the view that they're lying. I wouldn't dare do that. I've noticed that's happened. I think that's wrong. I wouldn't dare do that. If I was in their space and talking to them, I would listen to what they had to say and make my mind up from there. On the other side of it, I don't want a man's career completely ruined on the basis of allegations that I can't verify. I don't want to join that mob either. And as we've seen, the knock-on effect of this has been that many future speaking engagements and events featuring Lawrence Krauss have been cancelled. So it seems like the damage is done. The court of public opinion has made a decision on this, and
I guess while allegations are out there, I think for some people it would just make sense.
I understand
to cancel.
Yeah,
it's like with I think Tariq Ramadan was due to speak at some sort of university event, and people saying, "Look, while these allegations are going around, isn't it best, to suspend him from Oxford and not have him speaking at these events until these allegations are proven untrue or otherwise?"
It's PR, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I guess in a way I can see why that would make sense in a way, but it does make that person look guilty when things like that happen, when their talks are cancelled. But I suppose it does make sense in a way.
A lot of these allegations are anonymous in this BuzzFeed article as well, which doesn't help. But one of the things that is helpful about publicly speaking out against people who commit sexual assault and things like that, it usually opens the floodgates and other people start coming forward, and then we can kind of compare notes and get a bigger picture, etc. So either way on this, I'm just trying to be sensible. I don't feel like I have any loyalty to Lawrence Krauss. I feel like I have some loyalty to justice and being objective, and I just need more information, essentially. And if that's not good enough for people, I don't know what else to say, because that's the standard that we tend to apply to anything, really, that the standard that seems to serve as well, certainly in a court of law. I think it's just unfortunate that a lot of these people, and this is not criticism, I just think it's unfortunate that they don't feel that they can't go and make an official complaint to the police at the time. I understand there are many reasons why somebody would feel unable to do that. So this, like I say, it's not criticism, it's just a shame that we don't live in a society where people feel they can do that straight away, and then it can be looked into more thoroughly, rather than a blog post several years after the fact, and then it's put into the court of public opinion. And I don't see that as justice, really. So I'll be keeping a strong eye on this. It's not something I'm going to be ignoring. So if any more developments happen, I'm sure we'll discuss it further. I will say that I think Krauss's response to this has been pretty piss poor, to be honest. He's denied all of the allegations against him, which is, it's important to say. He's described them as false and misleading defamatory allegations. But according to the BuzzFeed article, I'll quote, "When asked why multiple women over more than a decade have separately accused him of misconduct, he said the answer was obvious, in quotes. It's because his provocative ideas have made him famous." So here's the quote. It is common knowledge that celebrity attracts all forms of negative attention from many different angles. There is no pattern of discontent revealed here that suggests any other explanation. So it's because he's famous is what his response to this is, which
no.
I think is a terribly poor response.
He should have just said these. He should have just, if he thinks they're not true, he should have just said these allegations are false, and I will prove them wrong in court, or I don't know, whatever.
I think he might be fairly litigious, actually, so we may see some legal action in response to this article, but like I say, we shall pick it up at a further date. What else to lighten the mood after sexual misconduct allegations? Iram, shall we move on to American school shootings, perchance?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, I'm going to go on nip out and do a bit of shopping for 20 minutes. If you just want to take that one while I'm gone, that'd be great. Iram, where have you gone? No, so we've had what's no longer a surprise to wake up to news of an American mass shooting, either in a school or elsewhere. This one was in Florida. So the gunman was 19 years old, managed to kill 17 people and injured many more after opening fire at a high school in Parkland, Florida. This is from the BBC. So this again has ignited a whole new round of gun control debates in America. And I don't know what use we're going to be outside looking into this, because we're from the UK and we just think the entire Second Amendment and the cultural relationship Americans have with their weapons is just batshit insane. But that kind of
we're not judging.
We're not judging, but I also think as well that kind of incredulity from this side of the pond doesn't progress the conversation. I see that a lot, where people in the UK or Europe or places that don't have the gun culture or gun ownership laws, they will say, well, just ban them, ban the guns. Why have you got guns? And I just think that's like saying just ban crime. It's pie in the sky. It's a completely...
No, but you can introduce tougher gun laws. I mean,
yes.
It's just so easy for a kid to get a bloody gun like that. It's just ridiculous. I think it was Australia that introduced
it was a buyback scheme, wasn't it?
Gun laws, yeah, and there was a massive drop. Now, sometimes it's difficult to prove whether the two have a correlation, but well, I think it's a no-brainer. Yes, you can't really ban guns entirely, especially when it's the issue is about civil liberties and rights. But come on,
something's got to change.
Got eight shootings in what, less than 2 months? It's
insanity.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, I know that Australia example is a good example of where, a society's decided that there's a public health issue here that needs to be tackled immediately, and they've done something about it. But I just don't. I think America's a very special case in this regard, with an emphasis on the special, unfortunately, because it's not like for like. The amount of guns in circulation in Australia is not comparable to the situation we find ourselves in America, and plus the Second Amendment right over there to a significant portion of that population is almost enshrined by God. It's almost held in as much reverence as any Islamic fundamentalist waves the Quran around. And you try take the Quran from that Islamic fundamentalist and see where that gets you. So I just don't think they could wake up one morning and say, give us your guns. I just can't see that being a realistic option. It'd be lovely. It'd almost be a magic bullet, for want of a better idiom. But it can't happen. It's not a reality that they can say, you know what, we're banning guns, hand them over. That's a one-way ticket to civil war. So I think you're right. I think stricter laws, tougher gun controls. And you know what I have seen, which is promising? American citizens who have a lot of good love for their guns have been making videos of them destroying their guns or handing them over. So it seems like change is going to have to come from a societal level, a ground level. I don't think a government is going to be able to influence significant change in this. I just think people need to take a more proactive response to the nonsense and hate and just general discontent that the NRA, National Rifle Association, are sowing with their absolutist approach to weapons, to the point where you can't even discuss gun control without them making it a case of it's us and them. They're coming for your guns, they're coming for your rights, etc. And it's just heartbreaking. It's another school, but I'm not even surprised, which is kind of worrying in itself. Here's a question for you: if you lived in the States, would you have a gun?
Well, yeah, I would. I'd be having peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I'd be spreading jam on with my gun.
Yeehaw!
Yeah. On a serious note, I don't know. Why would I need a gun? I guess it depends where I live. Maybe there are some areas where you might need a gun.
You know what? I might.
Really?
Yeah. I just think product of the culture, and you kid yourself into thinking. I mean, obviously, there's statistics out there that say if you own a gun, the likelihood of you being shot increases, exponentially. Just the mere, because they say, guns make you safer. The only way to stop a bad man with a gun is a good guy with a gun. But
that's just ridiculous. Trump's suggesting that teachers should be. Imagine going to school and your teacher has an AK-47 on the desk in front of them.
Open carry. I think I love America. Don't get me wrong. I'm very invested and concerned.
Love the Americans.
I'm very invested.
Have any American listeners? But...
Yeah, and it's easy to caricature the nation based on this, but there's a lot of concerned, sensible citizens there who've had enough as well.
It's unique. Their gun crime is quite unique. It's got a unique gun violence problem, and they. Yeah.
I just wish I could make them see this issue from the perspective of the wider planet, because it is incredible and it is a unique situation. And these school shootings, these mass shootings, are not a surprise when you consider how many guns there are in circulation, how easy it is to get hold of them. Imagine how. It doesn't even have to be evil people, like, ideologically bent people, or people who have got such mental health issues that it can lead them to violence. Imagine the angriest you've ever been in any situation ever. Just then throw a handgun into the mix. Can you imagine? I said once on Twitter, I've no idea why anyone does scare pranks in America, because the risk is just too great. I would never jump out and say boo to anyone in America. I don't know how people aren't being shot all the time. Like, I'm surprised it's the statistics are staggering, but in comparison to what it could be, I'm surprised it's not worse.
The thing is, considering how many incidents we've had now, I'm just amazed that nothing is being done. Maybe there is something being done in certain states at ground level. So it'd be really great if, our listeners, can point us out to some sort of good case study where we can see that something is being done at a local level or at ground level. That'd be quite interesting to have a look at.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So if any of my American listeners have noticed someone who's particularly sweet on this topic of gun control and think they might be interested in talking to me, I could even interview them. So yeah, send them in our direction, because we're at a loss as to the solution. I kind of think that it can't be a governmental one. As soon as the government start making noises about restricting firearms, the society at large tends to kick off. So we'll see where this goes. But like I say, they do seem, I don't know if I'm being overtly optimistic or incredibly naive there, but it does seem to be a different kind of feel in the air about this now. I think it might be just the start of some change in the fact that we're seeing people at the community, societal, street level saying, fuck this, I've had enough, I can't take another shooting, here's my gun kind of attitude. And I think it's a cultural thing. I think this weird almost erotic relationship they have with firearms there, this romanticized notion of the American with his gun protecting his family, I think that needs to be eroded at from multiple angles, and that's what's going to inspire change. So yeah, I think we've probably just solved American gun crime. What do you reckon? I
think we should rule the world.
We'll take in the myth code word for this week, just to make sure you've listened, is
President Ramzan.
President Ramzan, #yeehaw. I don't know what to talk about next. There's too much.
Circumcision.
Okay, yeah.
Before we get onto that, consider we've been talking, or maybe we should alternate. Finsbury Park.
Yeah.
Got the circumcision one.
Okay.
So speaking of right, is circumcision.
What do you want to do? These stories are not related, but I don't know if people want to cast the mind back to a man called Darren Osborne, man from Wales. He drove a rented van into a crowd outside a North London mosque known as Finsbury Park. Left one man dead, 12 injured. There was quite a bit of debate, which for me was just a distraction and a waste of time. Apparently the guy who did die, one of the worshippers outside the mosque, he just collapsed before this attack. People were administering aid to him on the ground, and in the process of this attack he then got run over, and there was people debating online about, oh, did he die first, did he die afterwards?
I think he did hit him.
Yeah, he did. He ran over him. He got run over.
That was in the crowd. Yeah, I think some people were trying to detract from that.
Yeah,
but
and what's the point?
It was just ridiculous. But yeah, he drove his van into a crowd, and then it hit quite a few people, and then it killed a 51-year-old man who died. Yeah, but according to him at the trial, he met with two men in a Welsh pub called Dave.
Blaming it on his mate Dave.
Yeah, mate Dave was driving, who just seemed to vanish.
Yeah,
like dynamo.
That's basic. Dave has an invisibility cloak, to which you use that advantage. So yeah, this story does get stranger and stranger. Like, so this, I mean, I know we kind of, I mean, this Darren Osborne character seems like a very troubled individual. Now he made up the story that it wasn't him, it was his mate Dave who fled the scene.
Come on, we all have a friend called Dave.
Dave is a bit dodgy.
Just gets us in all sorts of trouble.
Yeah.
Right?
And then he made the claim that actually he wasn't targeting worshippers. He'd actually gone out there to try and run down Jeremy Corbyn. Couldn't get to Jeremy Corbyn because of police presence and barriers, and accidentally ploughed into a group of worshippers, which is, again, not buying it, Darren. And in the court rulings and the information that came out in the court, apparently he had a very heavy interest in EDL content, followed a lot of Tommy Robinson stuff.
I was going to come on to that.
There's a separate story
what
there.
You made of that.
Yeah, so that's interesting. We're going to end up being Tommy Robinson defenders again, but I have to go with the truth, unfortunately. And he'd been following Britain First and things like that. So the bullet point of this whole episode is that the man has been jailed for life. So our society is utterly appalled with an individual who will get a van and drive it into our Muslim citizens. We will not put up with that to any level whatsoever. And this man's gone to jail for life, which is the right decision as far as I'm concerned. Now, there became a discussion afterwards about how he was radicalised. The court say he was radicalised in a very short space of time. Now, something bad happened here to Tommy Robinson, which I think was drastically unfair, and I'm going to say it. When the court stuff were being read out, journalists reported on it, and they were tweeting out that Darren Osborne had received an email from Tommy Robinson in the lead up to this attack. So all the newspapers ran with it, accused Tommy Robinson of radicalising this man, directly reaching out to him and inspiring this attack. Obviously, Tommy Robinson was getting lots of death threats, no end of abuse online, people trying to find out where he lived. And it turns out that Tommy Robinson had no contact with this individual whatsoever. What had happened is this guy had signed up to Tommy Robinson's newsletter at Rebel Media, and he'd just received an auto-subscription email, and that had either been miscommunicated in court, or the journalists reporting on the case had misinterpreted what was communicated in court. It remains unclear. I know Tommy Robinson was talking about legal proceedings against these journalists for this. What was your takeaway from that whole episode?
Yeah, I think there was some sort of misreporting there, the way they made it seem as though he had unique messages sent to him by Tommy Robinson. But I think it's still worth noting, he did look at a lot of content from Britain First and Tommy Robinson, and then went on to do something really horrible. I'm not saying that they're completely to blame, but I think it certainly can't be dismissed.
I agree, and I don't think I saw Tommy Robinson doing the media circuit after this, and I don't think he does well enough to condemn this type of thing. Keep in mind, he does say he doesn't condone violence, he doesn't advocate violence. Fair enough. I think he needs to really lean on the fact that he condemns these attacks 100%, and he didn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he didn't really do that. He tried to. He was using whataboutery.
Yeah, so he was blaming. he was saying, you're accusing me of radicalising this guy, but was it me or was it the numerous terrorist attacks we've had? Was it, even if that was what radicalised Darren Osborne, Tommy Robinson should still be saying it's still not good enough for him to do that. It's still not a valid excuse. After somebody commits vehicular murder, the bullet point should be how wrong that is. The bullet point should be about the victims. It shouldn't be, well, he was probably radicalised by this or that. I think Tommy Robinson...
It just makes it sound like he's justifying, because don't we see other people doing this when Muslim extremists go around killing people? Well, look at what the West is doing.
Yeah, blowback.
And they're like, oh, but no, we're not condoning it, but you're not exactly condemning it, and you really have to make it very clear. And the way he was avoiding that just... I don't know, to me, it spoke volumes.
Yeah.
He really should have just said what he did was despicable.
Yeah.
I had nothing to do with it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, and the other point also to be noted as well is that I think he got angry when he was watching the BBC Three documentary the BBC documentary on the Three Girls, was it called, about the grooming gangs. So he, thought that was outrageous, which it is, and then it just led to a whole chain of other events as well. So what does that mean then? Are we
BBC
to blame
culpable?
BBC? Yeah, is the BBC culpable for showing such a documentary? A documentary that was, well, it wasn't. Was it a documentary or was it
the docudrama, wasn't it?
Docudrama, yeah. So are we going to say that the BBC should never have put something like this on TV in the first place because people can get angry and we don't want that, because then they can go around trying to murder people? I just think there's just so many different issues here, and he had. I think he had some sort of... Did he have mental problems as well? Substance misuse?
Yeah, he does have a history of these things.
So there was a history there, and there were other factors that kind of fed into that as well. I just think, I think it's a little bit silly of Tommy to go around saying, well, there are all these terrorist attacks, because if a Muslim had been radicalized and had, say, for example, listened to an imam at a certain mosque, or a mosque had been doing something, or a scholar had said something, he'd be all over it. He'd be saying, this is the guy who was saying all this, which then caused, so-and-so to be radicalized. And then he'd probably go on with rebel media and try and get this imam in front of the camera, or the mosque in front of the camera, which he's done before, I think, with Finsbury Mosque. So I think he really, people just really need to stop being hypocrites when it comes to this type of issue, because, we've got, we've had plenty of Muslim extremists who have gone around and claimed so many lies, and here we have someone who's done the opposite, who had a man from a white background who wanted to, kill Muslims. He rightfully received a really long sentence for it. And I saw some people, I think, on social media saying, why is he not being labelled a terrorist? He is a terrorist. Why is he not all over the front pages? Well, he was. And he was charged with terrorism-related murder. So he was charged with that.
Exactly. They need to... The problem is, and there's this objection every time where Islamic terrorists seem to get the terrorist label sooner than others, and that's because usually we have the Islamic terrorist on film shouting Allahu Akbar moments before, wading into a crowd or, detonating themselves, etc. You can pinpoint an ideological motive fairly quickly in that sort of thing. We have to find out, unfortunately, what Darren Osborne believes before we can say whether he's a terrorist or not. And it's very, Allahu Akbar tends to give you an indication up front.
And also, like, the fact that he faced trial as well and denied it meant that we can't just go around saying anything that we want, because it's a live case. We can't say anything that would jeopardize that. Whereas, in other cases where the terrorists have been shot dead on the scene, it's, you can't really defame the dead, so it's easier to come out and say, it's definitely terrorism, even if it hadn't been.
You're not going to get sued for libel from the other beyond the grave, luckily. So in summary, I don't blame Tommy Robinson for radicalising this man, but I think he falls short when condemning this sort of thing. He doesn't hit the right note for me at all, which is worrying in and of itself, considering he's got such a large fan base. He needs to be very clear on this point. Shall we move on to circumcision, or what? What do you reckon? Yeah. Covering all the good stuff today.
Really are. This is a very cheerful TTM.
But I mean, there'll be people delighted about this, because whenever I bang on about FGM,
I was just going to say that, yeah.
What about male circumcision? I don't know why they've got that voice. I don't know why they've got that. That's the voice I hear, though.
You sound like a chav from Salford or something.
Yeah, mate, you got...
kid, circumcision allowed and that, yeah.
Can I use your phone? I'm out of credit.
Does that still exist?
That's a common refrain. Yeah, probably. So we're going to talk about male circumcision. I'm fully against messing with children's genitals. You know when you say a sentence out loud and you think that should never need to be said? That's what just happened to me then. Quick reality check. We're at a point in human history where I have to come out in favour of slicing at children's genitals. But, if it's religious, then, we're told we have to nod along and say it's their right. But it seems like the tide's changing on that, especially in Europe. So we had a case a while back where a Muslim man who was divorced from his wife was taking her to court for not getting him circumcised.
Oh, God.
And the court ruled in favour of the child, said when the child reaches an age, he can make his own decision. So daddy lost that one.
Common sense.
Yeah, common sense. Fair enough. Iceland look like they may be banning the practice across the board. They're now drafting legislation in that country to get this process banned. How do you think the Muslim and Jewish community have responded to this? Have they clapped along and said, yay, civil liberties, thank you for bringing us into 2018? Or do you think they've responded with accusations of bigotry and a fury over their rights being curtailed?
Well, judging by past cases, I'm going to go with the latter.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the strangest thing about religious rights. They will frame objections to any restrictions to circumcision, genital mutilation, as well. You're infringing on our religious rights. But people need to understand there's a line, and I think it's a very clear line. And where you bump into this line should be obvious. There's a line between being able to practice your religion, to worship, to even teach your religion to your children, as much as I'm not a fan of that. I still think that's a right. To go out and live a kosher life, to go out and live a halal life. But once those things start making, irreversible bodily changes to infants, or imposing your dogmas and conservative ideas onto people who don't share into your faith, or people who do share into your faith who just don't share into it to the same intensity, that's where the line is. And I think society should be very clear on imposing this. I don't think we should apologise for saying, stop snipping at your kids' genitals, please.
This is a really, really tricky one, because on the one hand, you have people going on about the right to believe in their religion and to practice it. And on the other hand, you have this issue of, what about the children's rights? Because, they're not old enough to give consent. And there was a discussion about this on the Moral Maze on Wednesday night. I don't know if you heard it.
Didn't. I've got it queued up, but Steve Evans of the National Secular Society was on apparently, and I'm always pleased to hear what he's got to say. Thoroughly smart and nice chap.
Yeah. Well, Giles Fraser was practically hysterical, saying Evans wasn't a best person to talk about Jewish theology.
Did he accuse him of blood libel at one point?
Yes, there was mention of blood libel in there. He's like, this is like the blood libel. He went hysterical, saying this is an attack on Judaism. I thought, really?
It's an attack on genitals, basically.
I'm sure there's more to being Jewish than, getting your penis sliced off. Now,
bagels.
Although that is what...
Bagels and circumcision, that's all it is.
Bagels and... Yeah. And I remember Claire Fox was sort of on the side of circumcision, which is unusual.
Oh, that is strange.
I thought she'd be against it, but she said, parents have the right to raise their children how they want. Well, yeah, but
It's physical abuse.
They don't have... well, the thing is, when it comes to circumcision, you can't grow a foreskin back. It's not like, I don't know, like a haircut. If you cut someone's hair, well, it's going to grow back.
Just a bit off the top, please.
Yeah. Or getting your, I don't know, ears pierced and then they block up again, whatever. It's a little bit more than that. And it's not just, Jewish people. It's Muslim people as well who do it. Apparently it's not compulsory in Islam, but it's seen as Sunnah, the Prophet's tradition.
I think the Prophet even goes as far as to say that female circumcision is preferable. I think that's the context. He doesn't say mandatory, but he kind of says it's preferable from what I remember of my deep analysis of the hadiths.
Thank you, Mufti Stephen.
You're welcome. That. No problem.
But I think in Islam there's like no set age for it, although it is, as with Jewish people, it's done at a very young age. It's done sort of within the first couple of weeks because they're babies, they'll heal. It's fine for them. They won't feel the pain for that long. Whereas if you do it as an adult, you will definitely feel that pain. But there's leeway there. I think, I've heard of cases where, Muslim boys get it done when they're a lot older. Ouch. Yeah. So it's, I don't know. I just imagine, like, there are so many things that people do that can be classed as abuse. People point out and say it's abusive, it's wrong. But then as soon as you say, it's my religious right to do this, it's seen as okay. It's like schools that teach only creationism as part of bloody science. That's my religious right. It's your right to believe that, if it's nonsense, but it's your right to believe it. You've no right to impose it on any other people. I'm just amazed that people would defend it just because it's seen as someone's religious right to do so. Claire Fox was defending it, which I was shocked at, and obviously Giles Fraser was shock horror. But what if say parents said, our daughter's 9, Islamically I can get her married now because she's at that age of puberty. Aisha got married at 9, so I'm going to get my child married off. Can we really say then, if it's her religious right, she can do what she wants with her child? We'd be outraged at that.
If you've got nothing else to say on chopping at children's bits, I thought we may move on to the ASLAN Awards. What do you think? I
think so, yes.
There's this misconception that people derive their values from their scriptures.
Who goes to hell?
Gays, fags, hundreds and hundreds of Jews.
You identify yourself as gay. Why don't you then choose to be Muslim when it says explicitly in Judeo-Christian tradition that is prohibited?
There's this misconception that people derive their values from their scripture.
The ASLANs.
So, the ASLAN Award is an award given to an apologist spouting lies and nonsense. And I have two incredibly juicy contenders this week, Iram. And I'm a little bit excited about this one.
Not Giles Fraser, is it?
No, it's better. It's better than this. We thought we was out. We thought we were done. Just when you thought it was safe to return to the podcast. Mo Ansar, everybody, puts himself forward for an honourable mention.
Is this only because that one person tweeted us and said, why don't we talk about Mo Ansar? Yeah, I'm talking about you. I forgot your name, but yeah.
It's really amusing to me that somebody just tuned into this podcast to get the Mo Ansar output.
Yeah, we've made you a very happy person.
Hello, you. So yeah, Mo's Mo problems, essentially. Now, this is beautiful. This is lovely stuff, I have to say. So I don't know if you want to cast your mind back to some frantic, panicked tweets Mo Ansar sent in 2016. So I shall read these. Now, Mo Ansar got pulled over by the Hampshire police, which is where he lives in Britain, and he tweeted, "Thank God. If we had armed police, I'd have been shot tonight. So aggressive, unprofessional and disproportionate, the policing." Then, another follow-up tweet with the Hampshire police tagged into it. "Black Lives Matter, hashtag." Next tweet. "Morning. Time to pay £150 and get my car from the impound. The insured car I was forced out of by 2 white officers, Iram."
Not white.
Whitey. 2 whitey. And his subsequent tweets after this saying that basically he'd been forced out of his car by 2 police officers. He'd done nothing wrong. He had a fully insured car, and he was victimised, essentially. And this is strange as well, because he said he was fully insured and they couldn't find him on the system. So he offered to buy a new policy there and then, and they wouldn't accept. Who does that? "Yeah, I've got a valid insurance policy. Oh, we can't find it. Oh, let me just set up a new one straight away. That's fine." That's not how it works. That's not how you do it. And even so, the police are under no obligation to let you sit there in your car on your smartphone and sign up for a new insurance policy. So many of us who take a keen interest in the output of one Mohammed Ansar was looking at this story with quite a sceptical gaze. I didn't buy it, one might say, which is interesting because a little while later, round about January this year, there was an article in the Daily Echo, which is a local newspaper for Mo, and I shall read. "Mo Ansar, 43, pleaded guilty to driving a vehicle without insurance and speeding. He's disqualified for driving for 6 months, fined a total of £520, ordered to pay £150 cost and £32 victim surcharge." What a cunt! What a cunt, Iram. This is
Can I just ask, how's he going to pay that when he doesn't work?
The Russia Today money's still sweet, I reckon. Putin.
Oh, yeah.
Putin's
and his gig
got him.
money?
Yeah, his life on the road with Mo Ansar. So, just to recap what's happened here, Mo Ansar, not only does he not have insurance, not only is he speeding, he gets pulled over by 2 white police officers who are just doing their job. They've stopped a driver from speeding, and upon further investigation have realised not only is he speeding, he has no insurance. They've behaved appropriately in accordance to the law, and he's made it out to be some sort of racist targeting. He will, when breaking the law, and bear in mind he's pleaded guilty to this, he will think, "I know what'll help here. I know what'll get me out of this little pickle, the brown card." And it's not happened. He's made no comment since this has happened, but this is a man who's putting people in danger by speeding. He could be ruining other people's lives by not having insurance, and he wants to claim that the police are racist for pulling him up on it. What a horrible, reprehensible character this absolute charlatan is. This is a man who has accused me several times of racial harassment and that I'm under police investigation, as if there's some crack shot police dragnet squad basically sitting there. I can just imagine it in a smoky room, some guy in a cream Mac just going over tweets and going, "Yeah, it's like, we're going to blow this case wide open, see, that's Stephen Knight, he's a wrong'un, gonna haul him in front of the court, see." I just like this, there's going to be a biopic made about this investigation one day, how Mo Ansar brought down half of Twitter because they said basically you're talking shit, and that amounts to racial harassment apparently. So fuck Mo Ansar is my bullet point.
Well, that's just racist.
See, that's the kind of thing
you should expect a knock on the door from the police anytime.
That is the kind of thing that he did used to report as anti-Muslim harassment. People would tell him to go fuck himself on Twitter or call him a twat, and he'd be like, he'd report it to the police as anti-Muslim harassment.
Oh my god! Like they must have, they must have a file on this guy. That, every time he calls, like, "Oh, it's Mo." Yeah, I just put it in Mo's file, shove it in the back of the drawer, never to be opened again. I just think it's hilarious He used the hashtag Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
So now
Holy
he's
shit.
identifying as black. I mean, first he identified as a lawyer and lawyer, a journalist. What else did he say?
Community leader, the bishop of the Muslim bishop of Southampton, something like that. Marriage counsellor.
And now he's identifying as black.
He should really be identifying as a criminal at this point.
He should identify as a twat, which is what he is.
I hope this has been a lesson for him, because I hope it's helped to make the distinction between crime and not crime. For instance, not crime, telling Mo Ansar to go and fuck himself on Twitter. Crime, driving above the appropriate lawful speeds and not having insurance. So I don't believe in karma, but justice has been served, I believe.
Oh, I'm actually dying right now. My stomach hurts.
I do have another contender, which
I think I know which this is.
Russell Brand.
Yes.
Now, you know what? I don't necessarily hate Russell Brand until he starts talking about politics.
Yeah, I don't hate him until he opens his mouth.
Yeah, I actually appreciate some of his comedy. I think he's a talented performer. I actually do think he's very smart, in fact. I don't think people give him enough credit. I think he is intelligent. Just think he's... and I do think he cares about people. I just think he channels it in the wrong direction. So
bless.
He has a podcast, and fair play to him. He's inviting on controversial, I suppose, quote-unquote, controversial speakers in his sphere of discourse. So he's had Sam Harris on, Jordan Peterson, people like that, and they are getting into it. And he had Sam Harris on, and every time Sam Harris tried to get him to condemn somewhere like Afghanistan for the treatment of women over there, the oppression of women, the forced veilings, the general patriarchal rule over there, he switched focus and started talking about how the West treats its women. He developed a real invested sense of cultural relativism. He said, who is he to say and judge other cultures? He thinks... So here's the thing, this is how he's got it really backwards. He thinks we are judging them because we are viewing it through the lens of a sort of a Western supremacist ideology, and he doesn't realise he doesn't realise that every time we talk about injustice in non-Western parts of the world, he can't help but talk about the West. It's the West's fault. No one else can do anything on their own accord. It has to be the West. To me, that's a sort of weird reverse Western imperialist attitude that anything that happens elsewhere must be our fault because we're so bloody influenced. It is
as well. It is. Isn't that playing into Western supremacism as well? That always our fault, as though everything the West does has that big an impact on absolutely everyone. So basically you're saying, yeah, in a way, we are superior because of this, because of how we affect everything. It's yeah.
So, I mean, there's a point in the conversation where Russell Brand started lecturing Sam Harris on how peaceful the Quran is. Sam Harris asked, have you read the Quran? Russell Brand replied with, of course I bloody haven't.
Sorry. Let me rewind a sec. So he said the Quran isn't violent and then said he hasn't read it.
Yeah, that's the basic level of diligence needed to proclaim such things about Holy Scripture. He kept saying this idea that he's unable to condemn the treatment of women in other places because he's been indoctrinated by the West. Sam Harris got him to try and say, well, would you accept some sort of exchange process between some kids from the Taliban over here and send your daughters over to the Taliban for a little cultural exchange? And if not, why not? And he just wouldn't answer. He's this person who's trying to claim that he's all for women's rights and equality, and he can't point at the way women are treated under like strict Islamic theocracies and say that is horrendous. And it's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating, and I know why it is. And it's this whole intersectional thinking now of we tot up different levels of oppression, and unfortunately skin color wins. If you are non-white, that seems to hit the top of the intersectional table. So we can condemn misogyny, we can condemn violence, we can condemn all sorts of ritualistic, conservative, dogmatic practices, unless the person perpetrating those things, putting them things into practice, happens to be non-white. Then it becomes a case of, well, you're punching down here, who are we? And it's this patronising mollycoddling of non-white people, these wretched, non-white people who can't think for themselves, who have to be protected.
Isn't that quite racist itself?
Yeah,
because you're treating brown people like infants. Really, you are perpetually infantilizing them by saying, well, they can't really control what they do or how they think, bless them. Whereas here in the West, we are civilized and superior, and we know better. So we should know how to respond to this and how to react, because they don't know what they're doing. That's quite racist. It's patronizing.
And meanwhile, there is a growing number of vocal reformist, activist dissidents screaming out for Western solidarity, screaming out for help and support. And do you think they're going to be comforted by some chimney sweep's obfuscation on the issue of forced veiling? And I mean, at one point, Sam Harris talked about the horrors, and I quote, of forcing women into bags. Brand got really indignant all of a sudden, interrupted him and chastised him for the incendiary language he was using. So he got more offended that Sam Harris would refer to the burqa as a bag than he does about the fact that people are being forced into these, let's be honest, bags. Right,
you know what, Russell Brand should go and actually wear a burqa and see how he feels wearing it. It's not comfortable at all. It's designed to restrict your movements and even how much you can see out of it. So, fuck you, Russell.
Yeah, and again, Sam Harris brings up the treatment of women in Saudi Arabia. There was this story about a group of women in a burning building, and the blooming religious police over there refused to let them leave because they weren't dressed modestly enough, and they burned to death. And so Sam Harris brings this horrible story just to show you how ingrained this modesty culture is, how deep this hatred of women goes in these conservative Islamic theocracies. And Russell Brand's response to that indictment of Saudi's treatment of women was to say, well, perhaps the Americans should stop trading with them. It brings it back to the West every time. I mean, that's a fair point. I know. I think our relationship with Saudi Arabia is unpalatable, to put it mildly. But that shouldn't be your reaction to the overt oppression of women.
Yeah,
you should have something to say.
We always, we condemn the West trading with a country like Saudi Arabia, and at the same time, we deplore the actions of its government. The two are mutually exclusive. You can do both, which we have done. It's just I didn't want to watch that because I knew it would be really bad for my blood pressure.
I had to take it in 20-minute chunks.
Yeah, I mean, I was already listening to the horror that was Morro Maze this week. I don't think I could have handled that. I also watched a little bit of Tommy Robinson versus Ali Dawah. That also was, it was just, it made my ears bleed. I also have a nomination too, Stephen.
Oh, go ahead. Yes. I'm very interested in this.
I'd like to nominate Justin Trudeau, the Canadian leader.
Didn't he just split up with Jennifer Aniston?
I think you're thinking of Justin Theroux. Theroux as in Louis Theroux?
Yeah, it's his cousin, isn't it? Is his cousin or brother? I have an unhealthy man crush on Justin Theroux. I was kind of more excited that he was single than Jennifer Aniston when the news broke. Is that wrong? Should I see somebody?
I think you have many issues, Stephen. Where do I begin? Actually, no, he's all right looking.
He's incredibly talented. He's one of them. So in the case of
I like his eyebrow raise.
His eyebrow raise. I'm a big fan of The Leftovers. It's an amazing TV series. It's one of them series. If you're spiritual and a believer, you can view everything that happens one way, and it'll play one way for you. If you're a cast iron baby eating atheist like me, you can view it through that lens. It kind of plays ambiguous enough, but he's incredibly talented. He's one of them men where you kind of, I don't want to be with him obviously, but I look at him and I think I wouldn't mind being him, looking like that and having his talent.
On from your
no, let's just talk about Justin. No, go ahead.
No. Yeah, Justin Trudeau, Canadian PM. He went to India for a state trip and just forgot to pack a suit. He just raided. He
went full on jive ho, basically.
Yeah, I think he basically robbed the outfit of an Indian grooming candidate. And said, yeah, you know what? I'll need this in India because that's all they wear there. And yeah, it was just ridiculous. I know a lot of people love Justin Trudeau, but I just thought, what on earth is he playing now? Not only did he dress up, he got his own family to play dress up, going to India, wearing all sorts of different outfits and doing his Bhangra dance at every given opportunity. I just wanted him to stop. Stephen,
a lot of Indian people felt the same as well. I noticed that the reaction from many an Indian was like, all right, tone it down, pal. But I mean, isn't the point of his visit... I mean, I understand the cultural exchange, and I do think you should get involved when you visit other places. I like to, but isn't the point of him being there to represent Canada? Shouldn't he be a diplomat for Canada? I mean, you'd have more respect for him if he went in a hockey outfit than dressing up
dressed as a auntie,
as someone who just fell off the set of Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, he was dressed as though he was in an elaborate wedding or a Bollywood movie. There's more to India than that, Justin. Yeah. No, it's great that you want to be involved, but seriously, just tone it down. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you don't see leaders of other countries going to Canada and, doing that. It's, yeah. I mean, there were, I think there was this funny article online where they were showing leaders of different countries going to India, and they had a picture of saying, here's Barack Obama in India wearing a suit. Here's Justin Trudeau dressed in a sherwani like he's a groom at a wedding. Here's, Macron in India. Here's Justin Trudeau again in India. It's just too much. Again, I get it. You want to sort of get involved, and
it's political cosplay, isn't it? I mean, I can't wait for him to turn up dressed as Bruce Lee to his annual China visit. We're all looking forward to that.
And if he comes to England, will he be wearing a bowler hat?
Austin Powers. He just needs to be Austin Powers. I think that's the best representation of our nation.
If he goes to France, I think he'll be wearing like a black and white top. And
an artist's like easel under his arm and a baguette under the other.
It's just so patronising. Like, seriously, enough is enough.
Yeah. So, Mr. Trudeau, what do you have to say about our beautiful France? Well, I think that's how it'll go. I think that's how he views cultural exchange.
Oh God! So who do you think should win the award?
It's got to be Mo Ansar. On your bike, Mo, because you can't drive.
Literally, because you can't drive. Oh.
So I want to. I mean, to be fair, we've not covered Mo in a while. It almost feels like kicking a puppy now because he's so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. I might have to. You know what? I think Russell Brand should get it because he's got a bigger influence than Mo. He's got this huge audience. He's got this young, hip group of people eating out of the palm of his hand. Russell Brand hosts The Truths. You know, he talks about all the social political dynamics in between all the things that the West are up to and stuff, innit? I mean, how...
That's a really good impression.
Was that all right? That's all right. I'll work on that.
Podcast doesn't work out.
Yeah, voiceovers. Yeah. But yeah, he does bamboozle with this kind of Oliver Twist style patter of language, and I just think if you can't say it clearly, you're not thinking it clearly. But he's got a bigger influence. There was some girl on the Big Questions this morning in the audience. I don't know if you watched it, but she said basically...
No, I was in bed.
Yeah, I think after Moral Maze, I think you were spent. I think you need to recharge your batteries, basically. She put her hand up and said she goes to Russell Brand's Truths to find out what the truth is rather than mainstream media now, which is very interesting. But he's got massive influence, and he could stick his head above the parapet and say what's going on in Saudi is not good enough, what's going on in Iraq's not good enough, and it's happens in spite of the West, not because of the West. I'm waiting for that celebrity. I'm waiting for that popular voice to stand up and say, you know what, maybe we're not to blame for the way that fucking Islamic virgins treat women in different countries. But it didn't come, and he had somebody in front of him, Sam Harris, who I think deserves, like, He's got to be a robot at this point. How zen he manages to maintain his rhetoric when he's speaking. When, you know, in the face of pure ignorance, he manages to stay calm and still manages to make his points in a nice, sensible way. But to be in the face of somebody who's obviously more knowledgeable on this and lead with ignorance on about how they're wrong was just one hell of a display. So I think Russell Brand should get it.
So you snubbed Mo. Isn't that Islamophobic?
Yes.
Do Black Lives not matter to you, Stephen?
What a dick. Unbelievable. Yeah, I'm going to give it to Russell Brand because I think Mo was far too insignificant, and he does not even deserve the Auslan Award anymore. I think I'm spent on all my topics for 1 week. I think I've rambled at you enough. Have you got anything else you really wanted to talk about?
I think we've covered everything, haven't we?
Could mention the Secularist of the Year awards.
Ooh, should we make when are we doing our next podcast? Are we doing that before or after the Secular conference?
When is the last weekend, isn't it, of the month? Yeah. I reckon possibly before. I don't think I'll have time. Hang a second. Let me just check my calendar. Well, let me just check. So
you have a calendar?
We got here mock Mo Ansar, download Justin Theroux pics, go to mosque. Oh no, it's the 24th. Yeah, so we could do it afterwards. We've got a whole week afterwards.
True. Okay, that's fair enough. Should we make a very quick mention of it then?
Yeah. So we always turn up to these things because I think it's really important to celebrate and reward secular activists, people who are in the trenches, who do like really, really important work and receive quite a lot of aggro and threats for it. So I'm always pleased to see these people and hear what they have to say. Have you seen the nominees?
I have, yes. Some very good nominees there, actually. Lone is on there. That's very good. Majid Nawaz, of course. My Stealthy Freedom, which is about the hijab in Iran. Got some Christians on there. I think one of them is a vicar, and he's done a lot of work on highlighting abuse, I think, within the church. So got some really, really interesting candidates. So I think it will be a very, very good conference.
So my advice is buy a ticket. I'll be there. If you come up to me, I shall buy you a drink at the bar later on as well.
And I'll be there as well. So, and if you don't know what I look like, there's somebody on Twitter that did a very nice sketch of me.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Because the one of me, I was like, oh shit, that looks like me. I can't really that's quite well put together. Yeah, some chap.
He's looking at you, Ben Buford, and you're.
Is that what he's called? Yeah, I mean, the guy's obviously got talent. I just think he just doesn't like your...
Seinfeld in mine.
Jerry. You should be henceforth known as Jerry for the rest of Taking the Myth. Yeah, so thank you for that. the gentleman who drew those pictures of us. I like mine. I think I'm gonna print it out and put it on my desk.
Do we want to answer people's questions, or do you think we've covered them?
Did we get some questions?
We did last time, yeah.
Let me just dig them out then. Yeah, so if you're a regular listener to the podcast and you want your question answered on the show, before we're recording, I always send a tweet out asking for suggestions and questions. So make sure you do send them our way, and we will do our best to ignore them or answer them or mock them mercilessly. One of the questions, did either of you listen to the Under the Skin podcast with Russell Brand and Sam Harris? Yes, we've covered that. See, this is how good we are, preempting the questions. Why do Brits care so much about guns in America and not the guns that pass through Saudi?
Covered that, yeah, baby.
I mean, praise be upon humanities. It's a good question, because obviously we do arms trade with the Saudis, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, it's a good point. I don't know why we can't be against both things.
And then someone else mentioned Lawrence Krauss, which we've done. Oh, here's an interesting one. Stephen, are you ready for this? Have you ever had an orgasmic moment with nature? If so, how did this manifest? What are your underlying reasons for the hate propaganda? Do you ever wonder why you are so unhappy? I'm answering your topic questions. Be honest. No mind games. Simple answers, please.
Okay, so every now and then my mum likes to send in questions. No, so what have I ever had a sexual experience with nature, was that? I mean, what the hell is that? Who sent that tweet?
It's somebody called The Nester UK.
This is strange. This is someone I muted. They've been sending me some very strange messages these last couple of days and posting some very strange things on my blog. So I thought that's a bit creepy. I shall tend to hate propaganda. I think they accused me of racism or something at one point.
Yeah, okay. Where does the orgasmic moment come in? That's quite random. I mean, did you mention something last time about, I don't know, getting excited over a tree? You know, you went out for a picnic, sat on the grass and felt something. You know, you felt the earth move. If
I have an orgasmic moment in nature, I will be arrested. That kind of thing's frowned upon in the UK. I don't know. This person's some very wishy-washy spiritual individual. From I gleaned the link in their bio, and I don't know where that question's come from. It's certainly not related to anything I've said. I think I kind of seem to think that they're questioning my atheism with a what about nature thing. I think they're using nature as a substitute for God, as many people do. So I don't think that's. I don't know what to say to that. I've never humped a tree. Should we just leave it there?
Okay. Well, I had a semi-orgasmic moment last night when I ate a melt-in-the-middle chocolate pudding for dessert. That was my When Harry Met Sally moment. I'm not sure if that counts, but I'm going to put it out there anyway.
Well, on that note, I'm off to fuck hedge. I'm gonna go and get orgasmic with nature. You may see me on the news.
I'm gonna disassociate myself from this podcast.
Never met him. Don't know who he is.
Don't know who it is.
Yeah.
Or I could be one of those people that come out, whenever something bad happens. Yeah, he was just, really quiet.
Quiet, shy, polite man.
himself, Yeah, this is shocking.
Yeah. Whole new meaning to the expression branching out, I feel. Okay. On that awful pun, I'm going to go and drink all the beer.
And I'm going to stay in my pyjamas, as I've done since I woke up.
All right, Iram, it's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Godless Spellchecker podcast. The podcast is a one-man operation, produced in my spare time away from my day job, and I love making it for you. If you enjoy what you hear, please consider lending some support. The show is entirely listener-supported. I don't sell anything, I don't run ads, and given the alternative and unpopular focus of my content, it's very unlikely to find a sponsor. So, there are a number of ways you can support and chip in and help improve the show and give me more time to produce more content. You can become a patron supporter and pledge a monetary amount per month or per episode by visiting patreon.com/gspellchecker.
If you can't lend monetary support right now, don't worry, there's other ways you can help the podcast too. You can share it on your various social media networks, or take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen to it. Your support is massively appreciated. Thank you. Think we've all learned something here today?